Hello, hello. And I'm back again. And yeah, it's been a little bit time, almost 2 weeks. And you had Easter, and there were some other things that I was quite busy with. But things have cleared up a little bit, and I thought I'd provide another status update on the things I'm working on. And I have actually managed to write a little bit on the Isekai story. So I have basically started on what I guess I could call part 3 of the story. And it is the end of the first story arc, more or less. And there's some, I guess you could say, the last part of this, what we're calling part 3 is perhaps you could perhaps divide it up into 2 parts again and say that one is part 4 and one part 3, but the one that would be called part 4 is it's mainly an epilogue, you could say, to part 3. So I think I put it in the same basket. And I started writing part 3. I haven't gotten really far, but I have at least gotten started, and I have written a little bit, and I have planned out quite a little bit more. So I have big parts of part number 3 more or less ready to go. I have also written some of it, at least a sort of initial attempt at writing it, some of it. And so it's coming together, I think. I think it seems realistic that I can finish this third part, and with that, the initial part of the story. And one thing I was thinking about was what should I do after reaching that point? And I sort of been thinking about calling the story parts that I've been working on now, sort of wrap it together and call it book 1. That's something I've been thinking of. And that's one possibility, and in that case, what do I do for part 2? And there are some possibilities, obviously. One is to simply say that, okay, this is a standalone story. It ends in a sort of open way, and that's okay. That's one thing I was thinking a little bit about. And then there was another alternative, which was to simply just keep going. Much of the story that I have written so far was written by simply starting to write and see where I ended up, rather than thinking too much ahead and trying to plan too much. And that has worked out fairly well. Things story-wise aren't extremely complicated, but still, I must say that it has worked out quite well. So the one possibility would, of course, be to just continue writing. And if I do put this up on some sort of serial novel site, which is something I've been thinking of, something I want to do, well, then if there are some readers of the story, then presumably they would appreciate having more to read. I must say that the main argument for not continuing to write would be that, well, at least I think that the let's call it book one then, just for the sake of it. The book one story is I think it's fairly interesting in the sense that there's a lot going on, and you meet the characters, and you have the initial interactions, and they get to know each other, they grow, and so on. So you have a lot of things going on. But if you do a book two, well, then it's just and then they did something more. It's like it ends up being you introduce the characters in book one, and then you just spend more time with them in book two, and I was sort of worried that it wouldn't be as interesting if I managed to put together an exciting part number one. Will I be able to sort of top that in a book two? That was sort of the worry, and I guess that's not really. I think maybe it's too early to sort of think about that sort of thing, and even if it wasn't too early, perhaps it's the wrong kind of worry to have. But if I do continue to write, and I sort of want to do that, the question becomes what should be the story. The first part, book one, so-called, is obviously the character arriving in this world, and then you have events that the character is thrown into and that he reacts to, and so on. And that's okay. But if you're going to continue, you would naturally need to have some kind of conflict. I guess you could always go some kind of slice of life kind of route, but since book one would be very different in style than that, then perhaps that's not really a nice way of doing it. You create expectations, and then you don't deliver on those expectations. I think it should sort of be related in content, if at least if not necessarily identical. That's what I'm thinking. And I was thinking a little bit about what kind of topic, what kind of problem I would have, and I thought of some alternatives, and mainly they come into the category of and then something else have happened as I mean, for example, you have some enemy appearing, and then they fight that enemy in various ways. That would be one way of doing it, and the sort of simplest way. And I thought a little bit about some alternatives for this. Again, it's perhaps a little bit early, but still it's difficult not to think of it. And I have these moons, for example, that I have been thinking could be related to some kind of thing. And you have, since this is a fantasy world, you might have things happening in that happened in the past that might influence events in current time, and you have all sorts of possibilities for creating some kind of conflict, but I wasn't really convinced about any of them. But I think it was maybe yesterday or today I had the idea, or rather I was thinking a little bit more about the character having some kind of connection to the to this world. So he dies. He lives in this world, or rather, some kind of equivalent to this world. So Earth, and then he dies, and he's reborn in this fantasy world. But the ending I wrote for this story has at least some connection to this world again, Earth, and that was mainly something I thought was a kind of throwaway. So that was probably the closure made it sort of fun, at least for me. But after thinking a little bit about it, I have more or less managed to convince myself that building upon that and having more interaction with the world, with Earth, around current day Earth, is perhaps the way to go. I guess the main argument against that is that I think perhaps there is some, again, this is just my conjecture from my side, but at least I, growing up, didn't have much. I thought the idea of having a mix of fantasy and current day Earth, so modern technology and so on, was silly. I didn't like the idea, but then I watched Gate, the anime, and I thought that series was extremely cool. I really liked that series. I think I watched it twice in a short while, and I have lots of the books that I want to read, and I have the anime. Perhaps like to watch it again someday, but I think they managed to do the combination of technology and fantasy world quite well. And then there's also the Stargate SG-1, which is also related in some ways, in that you have gates being opened to all sorts of in that case it's planets, but conceptually it's more or less the same thing. So you have you travel through gates, and then you run into societies with different technology levels, and it might as well be magic. I don't think they had magic in SG-1, but they had technology that is so advanced that it can appear as magic, but I don't think there was actually magic in that world. So but that's really no reason to not have it. You could equally have some kind of it might just as well have been the mix of technology from our time, Earth, current day Earth, and some other more primitive society that uses magic. So the idea in itself, I think, works well. But again, this is just me thinking. But I suppose the idea is that don't want to have technology mixed in with fantasy, meaning that they would not be interested in this story. And I think perhaps, again, this is just me speculating, but I would perhaps expect that to be a large portion of these that are interested in fantasy. If you want to read about people running around on horses and throwing spells and so on, you don't want to have some kind of tank or helicopter flying through the scene. That sort of messes up things. So I guess that's the price you have to pay if you want to go that direction. But when I thought a little bit about what the possibilities were story-wise, I must say that I think perhaps that's the right way to go. And I think perhaps that's what I'll do for the book 2. I don't know how fast I'll start on that thing, and I guess I'll find out when I get going how long that story will be, but it would be nice if I could manage to get a book 2 out of it that was equal size to book 1, but I don't know, book 1 is getting quite long, so that might not be realistic, but if I'm putting this up on some kind of serial novel site, then I guess it doesn't really matter, since it's just new chapters being put up, but yeah, so that's something I've been thinking of, and that would there's several reasons why I want to do that. One is that it will allow me to play a little bit with some kind of story settings that I enjoy quite a lot. Another is that I'll be able to mix in some interesting so you have Ilareth, for example, who is extremely good at fighting without using magic, but to what extent are elves magical creatures? What happens if they no longer have magic? And how would magic work on Earth, and so on? So there are also kind of interesting things, and there are also some, let's say, unresolved storylines, you could call, or rather some unresolved events from the time when the protagonist was alive on Earth that could be continued and built on. And there's of course the ending of part 3 called book 1, ending of book 1, and what happens then, and how that connects to Earth and so on. So there are several possible story threads that make that kind of story interesting, and again that would sort of continue the way that the story is written or rather has been written so far, in that it introduces the character to a new world, and he adapts to the world, and the world to a certain extent adapts to him, and by taking at least some events, or rather having some kind of connection with the world that he came from, you would have much of that again, because you would have well, there are two things you could do. One is that Earth comes intruding on the fantasy world, meaning that you have potentially people and technology from Earth being or rather appearing in the fantasy world, and the effect that has on the world and the characters there. And the other is that the characters from the book travel to Earth, and in that case the technology and society of Earth and the sort of collision you would have again presents lots of opportunities for different things that could happen. And it also, I guess, opens some possibilities for what the protagonist can do, because realistically, he at the start of the book, he is, or at the start of the story, he's reborn because he dies, unfortunately, and He has background in computers, but computer science is a field that has had an extremely large amount of money, resources, man-years put into it from perhaps even before the Second World War, but anyway, on a serious level from about the end of the Second World War and up to today, and the amount of specialization, knowledge, technology, and so on that goes into that. Not to talk about all the math and physics and so on that is the basis for all these things. There's no way that one person can know all these things and have it in his memory. But if you go back to Earth, well, then you immediately have the possibility of him taking information from there to this fantasy world again. At least as an option, and it's sort of an obvious option. So we'll see what happens. But anyway, that's what I've been thinking. So I'm a little bit curious how I'm going to handle it. The way I see it is that the initial conflict is more or less solved in the first book, and then you have a new conflict, but the background for that conflict and the characters and organizations and whatnot that will be involved in that conflict would it make sense to essentially start writing a story about that, so that you sort of get the story from the other side before there is a conflict, or simply letting the characters experience things as rather letting the reader experience things in the same order as the characters in the book would. So I guess either is a possibility. I think it would be some room for having some interesting stories set in this say the antagonist side, and what they are doing. It could be some room for some interesting stories there, so that in itself might be interesting, but that would essentially be starting from scratch in many ways. I don't know. Of course, I would have to create the characters and so on for that setting also, if I wanted to introduce it into the fantasy world. So perhaps it doesn't really matter that much work-wise. But another alternative would be to sort of interject it into the main story, but for example have one chapter that is set from the viewpoint of some antagonist-like character. But when reading, I'm not so fond of that myself. You have some kind of exciting events going on, then you have to read about some B character that you don't really care about. So we'll see, I guess. At least if you split everything out, you have you will have things a little bit more well separated, and you don't have to read the other stories if you don't want to. But yeah, so I don't know. There are some alternatives. But if you do put it in other books, to say, put it that way, so you have a separate set of stories about the antagonist type characters. If you make reading those optional, you would essentially be in the same situation as if you didn't say anything about them at all, the background wise, because you would have potentially some that didn't read those books, only the fantasy books. So that's also something to consider. I guess I'll just I'll think of something when I get that far. It's still a little bit ways off, but maybe not extremely far off, since I have some bits of the part 3 of the story that I haven't figured out yet, but much of it has been decided on, so it's mainly a question of writing down to have been thinking about, and after I have done that, I can start writing the continuation. So that will be interesting. I had originally planned to read a little bit today, but I had a look at the next bit, and there's some I'll have to read through it a little bit. It was one part of the story that I was considering rewriting a little bit, so maybe I'll rewrite that a bit before I continue reading anything more. Which means that I have more or less gone through what I wanted to do today, and we'll see how it goes. I'll continue working on the story, and I'll hopefully be back in not too distant future with some updates. Maybe I'll try to read a little bit more or so. We'll see. But for now, I think I'll say bye-bye, and thank you for listening, and bye-bye.